continued series of the great rabbis of yesteryear. Now, seemingly, 3rd of Shvat, according to the Hayomi website, it's going to mark the Hilula of Rabbi Nissim Palumbo, very famous rabbi of his time. And actually, 100% sure, seemingly, when the actual date was when he actually passed away. But they would mark his Hilula on this specific date in Taf Resh Aleph on the 3rd of Shvat, because I believe they quote that, I think they mention it because that was a time period where the Haskama for his book, Yafa Enough, actually printed through Rab Meir Yaish, who was a ram inside the city of Kushta, and a great rabbi over there in himself. But we happen to be here this week on the 3rd of Shvat, so we're going to mark it also just because the Hayomi website have actually listed it over there. So he came from a great family. I think in the year 1797, he was born in, I think, Istanbul in Turkey. Remember, that was like a bastion, a great place of Torah learning in of its day. Now, he would grow up under Torah auspices, especially from his grandfather, Rabbi Palumbo, who was another great rabbi of his day. Maybe we're going to speak about him for a minute, because he really, really was a famous rabbi. Let's speak about his grandfather, Rabbi Palumbo, who was a very, very famous rabbi in Turkey. I think he was also from Kushta, from the same place. His grandfather was a Rosh Yeshiva and the head of Jewish court over there, I think during the 17th century, respectively, and was the author of the Torah colossal work called the Yad HaMelech. Let's explore a bit with regards to him. Haya'av Beitin Isu Behete B'Kushta, I think in around the time period of 1772. So remember, this was his grandson was born in the year 1797, so this was more than 25 years before. I think come 1788, Kabar Yished Bator Chaver Beit Din Hagadol Shel Haschamot Shetiknu Chavrei Bet Din Li'isu Beheta. So it was part of this great grand, let's say, Bet Din in of itself. Nisa L'Reina, I think his wife's name was Rabbinit Reina, so hence she'd be the grandmother of Rabbi Palumbo, who we're speaking about today, if I'm not mistaken. And very interesting. I think he would write famously various different psake dinim, different decisions, especially with another famous rabbi of his time, Rabbi Abraham Yuchas, who was the author of the Torah great work called the Bnei Abraham, and also another great rabbi. His grandfather was close to Rabbi Nissim Palumbo, or also known as Rabbi Nissim Shmuel Palumbo, who was the head of Jewish court at Darshan, a Parashan, an outstanding Torah scholar in Kushta, and the author of the Shut, the Pe'at Negev, if I'm not mistaken, of that specific era of time. His grandfather, Rabbi Eliyahu, I think in 1792, Chatam Kavar Krab Ha'ir B'Kushta. He'd parsem b'sher hibro ha'chashuv al Rambam. I think he'd write a great Torah colossal work on the Rambam itself. He'd katev im Rabbeinu Dara. He would actually write with various different great rabbis, including Rabbi Nissim Palumbo, who was the author of the Pe'at Negev, great book. And obviously, as we are speaking today, they're including among his descendants is Rabbi Nissim Palumbo, obviously, and he had great other descendants, including Rabbi Eliyahu, who I think would have many, many different Torah students, and also Rabbi Eliezer di Tolodo, if I'm not mistaken, and Rabbi Avram HaKohen, Rabbi Eliyahu Anab. These were great rabbis of the time. Let's speak about them because they are connected to Rabbi Nissim Palumbo here to some specific degree somehow. Who was Rabbi Eliezer di Toldo? He lived between 1770 to 1848. He was also head of Jewish court in Kushta. He was the author of the Mishnat, Rabbi Eliezer, and I think he was learning alongside, obviously, Rabbi Eliyahu Anab, who we're going to speak about in a minute, who was also connected, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and he was very part of this great Bet Din over there. And I think it was part of the Bet Din of Rabbi Shmuel Chaim, if I'm not mistaken, and various other Batei Dinim. Rav Shmuel Chaim, obviously the author of Shemin HaMishcha, and who was, I think, the head rabbi in Turkey at that stage in time, one of the head rabbis over there, we have to point out. What's interesting about Rabbi Eliezer di Tolda, I think various different of his questions would be traveled around all over the Ottoman Empire, especially in Jerusalem and in various other places. Also, I think even Rabbi Chaim Pelagi will actually quote him and give him a eulogy in Izmir at the time when he passed away, if I'm not mistaken. So you can see the caliber of the Rabbi. I think he was the author of the Mishnat Rabbi Eliezer, which was actually divided into two parts. It was a shut, let's say, shut hamachil psakim shnatan, and he would have a Sachelek Bet, if I'm not mistaken, which was printed, I think, connected very much to Eliyahu Anav, if I'm not mistaken, over there. So he's one rabbi which we speak about. Now, another connector, let's just say, seemingly to Rabbi Nissim Palumbo, was another great rabbi named Rabbi Eliyahu Anav. Who was he? He was, I think he passed away in 1832. I'm not sure the exact date when he was actually born. His rabbi was Rabbi Eliyahu Palumbo, and his Talmud was Rabbi Eliezer di Toloda, who we just mentioned about before. He was a rabbi in Kushta. He was a Rosh Yeshiva in Al-Alta, if I'm not mistaken, and very much was active, especially during the earlier parts of the 19th century. I think he would learn inside the famous yeshiva in Kushta. If I'm not mistaken, he'll be eventually appointed a Dayan in the city, and he'll be appointed one of 3 rabbis. Let's just say, it says נמנה כאחד משלושת רבני העיר ששארו הסכמת של בית דין איסור והיתר של קושטא. There was famous Bet Din, I think, in Kushta, called the Bet Din Isu Beheta, which is very, very interesting. So it will be interesting to learn more within regards to the realms of that. I think he himself passed away in the 1832, and once again, the great rabbis of his generation would actually eulogize him. I think among them was a famous Rabbi Shlomo Hakim, who was a rabbi of Izmir at that point in time. Rabbi Shlomo Hakim, if I'm not mistaken, passed away himself in 1838 and was the author of the Melechet Shlomo book. So that's very interesting. And Rabbi Eliyahu Anav didn't just have Rabbi Eliezer di Toloda as a star student. Also, there was another famous rabbi we spoke about, I think, at the time period when we recorded a video about Turkey. His name was Rabbi Yitzchak Akshuti, if I'm not mistaken, who was another very, very much great rabbi of his time, someone that we very much have to point out over here. So very, very interesting. Everyone tuning in live, welcome to our community. We're exploring a few of the highlights of one of the great rabbis from Turkey, Rabbi Nissim Palumbo, who was a great rabbi. So he would get married, if I'm not mistaken. Nasal Isha et Nechtato Shel Chacham Yitzchak B'cho David, who was author of Divrei Emet. So who was he? Let's find out a bit within regards to him. Seemingly he was also another famous rabbi of his specific point in time. I think he lived between 1690 to 1755, so going back a generation. He was also a rabbi in Kushta, and obviously the author and the ador of this great Torah book in of itself. He was... much can be said with regards to his biography. I think he would learn in yeshiva, if I'm not mistaken, connected to Rav Shmuel Halevi, who was a famous posek and Rosh Yeshiva in Kushta. And during the 17th century, if I'm not mistaken, he'll be eventually appointed a Dayan in the Bet Din of Kushta, along with other great Dayanim, including Rabbi Eliyahu Klamidi, Rabbi Chaim Even Shangi, if I'm not mistaken, and various different of his teshuvot, answers from questions, would actually come out inside the great Torah book called Divrei Emet. And what's interesting is, various different, especially with regards to Tkiyat Shofar, Hanetzach Hama, Rosh Hashanah, he'll give various different teachings in of itself. A famous chronicler of the name Meir Ben Yahu, another person we've spoken about here, would actually discuss about his book, speak about it per se. And Chibur Hasaba Kedisha of Rabbi Shlomo Eliezer Alfandari at Divrei Emet, who Subi Yerushalayim, seemingly Rav Shlomo Eliezer Alfandari, who would live at a later time, would really take a liking to his book, and there'll become a connection within regards to that. The Saba Kedisha himself passed away, I believe, in the year 1930. And what's interesting, they all, I think 3 of his sons will become rabbis in Kushta in Istanbul, including Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi David, and Rabbi Avram B'cho Yitzchak, if I'm not mistaken. Now, it's interesting, he would have a chatan under the name of Rabbi Avram ben Avigdor. He was another Rosh Yeshiva of the Ottoman Empire, of a yeshiva over there, and he was Rosh Yeshiva in Adrianopel and the head of Jewish court in Istanbul. We have to point out some very prominent positions his chatan would have, and something very much we should celebrate and appreciate over here in this channel. He would author a Shilot Shuvot book, I think, write Kiddushim on the Talmud Bavli and on the Mishnah Torah to the Rambam. And that actually writes, that was Chatan itself, so that's very interesting. But let's go back, we went on a tangent. Let's speak again about Rabbi Nissim over here on this special edition, because we can say more. Now, he passed away in the 1841. And now, at the moment, we're going to just come back in a minute. We're taking a short 1-minute break, so just wait here. In the meantime, welcome to our community if you're new, and we'll just be back in 1 minute, friends. Okay, so just hold this space, and we'll be back in 1 minute. Hi, shalom, everyone. Thanks for being patient over here and waiting as we're exploring the life of the famous Rabbi Nissim Palumbo, who was a great rabbi of his son, a rabbi we've spoken about here on various occasions before, and always a pleasure to speak about great Turkish rabbis of yesteryear. And I'd first of all recommend everyone, we did, I think it was a 5 or 6 part series within regards to the famous Turkish rabbis of yesteryear. So please, everyone, look back on that and watch those videos, because there was a lot of great content we had within regards to that realm. That's something that we very much have to point out over here on our community. Okay, so let's speak a bit more about him. Seemingly, he passed away around the year 1841. So if he was born in 1797, he would have been about 44 years of age, approximately, at the time the great rabbi had passed away. So that's something that we have to point out over here. And as we stated on the onset, we're not sure the exact date he passed away, but the Homey website, which I'm quoting this from, seemingly will quote it as the Gimel Tevet, because that was the date when an approval for his book, the Yafet Anaf, would actually come out. and very, very interesting. It says over here, and I think this would be actually through Rabbi Meir Yaish, who was another great rabbi. He was a ram in the city of Istanbul, if I'm not mistaken. So let's just say something about Rabbi Yaish over here. I think it's very, very important to speak about the rabbis, just to get a feel of who was the rabbis and the caliber, because it was a high caliber of rabbis at that point in time that was very much connected to many of the, let's say, great stages of that window of time. So who was he, Rabbi Yaish? So let's explore a few of the highlights within regards to him. I think it's definitely very important to speak about him. And I think it was a common name, if I'm not mistaken. The family name Yaish was in of itself. I think if it could be connected to Morocco, that specific family name, but it was a very famous one of its specific point in time. And that is very, very interesting also to point out within regards to that. Anyone tuning in live, welcome to our community as we're exploring the life of a great rabbi of yesteryear who actually came from the amazing place in of itself. So very interesting. So who was he? I think there was a specific, I think you can find Meir Yaish's, I think some of his teachings inside the National Library of Israel website, nli.org, if I'm not mistaken, .il, which I recommend everyone to look into, if I'm not mistaken. So let's continue more with regards to him. Now, this book, the Yafeh Anaf, if I'm not mistaken, would be published in the year 1877. It will contain as many as 251 pages. And they give a description. First of all, I think it was printed in Izmir, this great Torah colossal work. And I think, it's based on various different sugyot, Torah topics on the Talmud Bavli. It's over here. Zichron Rishonim v'Achronim, Psakim v'Ktatim v'Kol Davar HaKasher v'Teshem B'Sof, Drushim Pe'ulot. And I think, very, very much so. And it was printed, I believe, in Izmir, if I'm not mistaken. It was maybe Hebrew, maybe in Latin also. It would have publications in of itself, respectively. I'm just looking at the preface as we are speaking at the moment, because it really does look like a very, very important, let's say, Torah book in of its time. And remember, Turkey in of its day would be a main center of Torah learning from all across the world. There was like huge amounts of Torah being learned and taught at that point in time, and huge amounts of importances were actually, let's just say, achieved in that specific vicinity. And you can just see the caliber of Rabbi that he was actually very close to. That's something that we have to point out. So this book actually contained various dinim on the Choshen Mishpat. That's part of the Code of Jewish law, Drushim and Liukatim. Now, as I said before, I believe it was printed after he passed away. It's actually, I think, through his son, Rabbi Eliyahu Raphael Palumbo. Now, this would actually be printed, if I'm not mistaken, in Izmir in the year 1877. So this would be approximately, if I'm not mistaken, about more than 30 years after he passed away. So very, very interesting. He was the son of him over there, and we'll bring out his book. There's not that much information I can find about him, but if anyone has more information about Rabbi Eliyahu Raphael, about this famous rabbi, please, I would really appreciate it if someone could give me more information. And it's always great to learn about the great rabbis of yesterday, and seemingly this happens to have been a famous rabbinic family of its day in those specific locales. So that's something that we very much have to point out also within regards to the great book. Okay, so it was printed in Izmir in 1877. We're going to explore a few of the highlights now from his book. And there are various different Torah teachings, so I recommend everyone to look into that. As I said before, it's a book that contains 251 pages. So that's something that we also must point out over here. Okay, so one of the teachings he has, I believe, featured actually in page number 14, Amud Aleph. It actually states over, the importance of unity inside the Torah. This is a key ingredient, just say, to bringing Moshiach close. Now, it actually says it was actually printed, this book, Dafus ben Sion Benjamin Ruditi, Ben Yoshua Moshe, if I'm not mistaken. So that was the name of the printer of the, which is definitely interesting. Also, which we very much have to point out, he was. I think they do actually quote him on various websites just to try and find out some information within regards to him. I think, especially if you go to Kedem Auctions websites, you will see his name over there come up within regards to various different auctions. Now, it's actually interesting. Rob Benzion Benjamin Rudetti, I think, would also write a very thorough, colossal work, or will be very much involved with it. I think if you go onto Google Books, a website, the insights over there, it actually talks about it. Kizet Kol Adam, if I'm not mistaken, where there was a psak on the Tanakh, and various different Torah learning. Kizet Kol Adam, pasuk Tanakh, Aleph Memarim, Di La Gemara, I Limdim, I Vediyum, I Meshalim. And so the author, I think he printed this book in the 1884, and he's got various books he's connected to over here. For example, Seba Avota Rosh, this is one of them. Maybe connected to Rabbi Yitzchak Pelagi, if I'm not mistaken, but that we'll have to look. But Rabbi Benzion Benim Moroditi would have a book, I think, printed in 1867. And also in 1883, the Kizeh Kol Adam, yeah, which just mentioned about. Also another one in that specific year, 1883. In 1884, Kizeh Kol Adam Pasukei Tanakh, if I'm not mistaken, it's also chronicled over, and various other books printed in 1864, 1865, and yeah, very, very interesting over here. So just to point out, within regards to this great rabbi, I think there will be a Sefer Zevach Pesach also connected to Benzion Meir Rudetti, which is El Sedeh El Korban Pesach, if I'm not mistaken, and that gives a more descriptive, let's just say, inclusion within regards to that. Another teaching he gives over in the book, Melamed, Shavudat Tzedakah, Shetoreach Latet Davar Mezuman Ad Olam. There's importance with regards to charity, how it's going to preserve someone, and it really stands forever. And this featured very much in page number 3 in Amud Bet, if I'm not mistaken. And once again, it was printed in Izmir in the year 1877. That's something that we have to point out now. Another teaching, friends, says okay, so it says Melamed Minatan Lemashisa Yaakov Shechatanu Lo Be'irud Al Yedei Sin'ah. So where is this featured? I think this featured on page number 5 inside the book. Once again, I think it floats over between Amud Aleph and Amud Bet. Once again, it was printed in the year 1877. We're going to explore a few more highlights from the book. We're going to take another short 1-2 minute break over here. So please, in the meantime, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back in 1 minute, friends. Okay, thanks very much for everyone being patient over here. We're exploring the life within regards to a great Turkish rabbi of his time, Rabbi Nissim Palumbo. We're exploring a few of the highlights from his book, and we've already related over 3 different highlights from his great Torah colossal work. I'll share over a few more. One of them teaches, I think, in the Yafei Anaf, in the Likutim, I think in page number 24, Amud Aleph, Melamed, She'im hayinu omrim shira, lo yita shechinat begalut. Another, let's say, important teaching that actually very much comes from this book. That was something that we have to very much point out over here, friends. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that comes, as we said before, from page 24. Another very great Torah teaching. Melamed, shemedaber lashon hara, ma shlumuad olech lesitra achra. How bad is a transgression within regards to speaking lashon hara, evil gossip in of itself, that it goes, whatever is being taught over there, to the sitra achra. So how much devastation something like this, an atrocity, let's just say, can actually take place over here by even saying words over within regards to lashon hara, and how careful we've got to be within regards to speech in general. And that's why I very much recommend everyone to learn book of the Chafetz Chaim, Hilchot Lashon Hara, which will give various different insights within regards to that, and will very much promote and make us aware how important is speech in general in Judaism, how we speak about other people, and what we listen. Also, we have to point out within regards to other people, because it's so important that we listen to the right things, we say the right things. Speech is, let's see, very, very much a key ingredient just within regards to our day-to-day lives. So that's something that very much have to point out also, friends. So anyone tuning in live, we're exploring the life of Rabbi Nissim Palumbo. Was a great rabbi, especially during the earlier parts of the 19th century. So it's very much an opportune time to speak about a great rabbi over here. Great Turkish rabbi. Remember, Turkey was a bastion area of Torah learning in of its day, and very much we can actually see that from some of the highlights here of this great Chacham's life. So let's explore one final teaching from his book, very, very important book over here. He teaches over here to just share a final idea. He states, I think this is actually coming from Daf Aleph, if I'm not mistaken, from Amud Bet. So right at the start of the book, so important that even in our financial dealings, in our money matters, Hashem is always found in every single thing. And we're going to explain this paragraph over here, friends. He says, "V'dimo oto lemishpach." Now I'm reading here from the Haimi website. "Shekashufech milmata notnim letocho od melmala, aval kshe'eno shufech melmata eno notnim letocho melmala. Nimtza sheksha'adam noten tzedaka umachsam meno motzei HaKadosh Baruch Hu makom liten lo yoter. V'zeu haremes hamesorah." Speaking about, let's say, a specific hint with regards to the Torah. Mesorah haloch v'gadal shenoten tzedaka meruba haloch v'shov shenotnim lo man hashemayim. Talking about within regards to providing heavenly bread from Shemayim, the sky. Haloch v'chasre she'eno noten tzedaka haloch she'eno notnim lo od v'az haloch leyelech v'chu lo aleinu. This is a very, very important teaching that he actually teaches over there, and it's actually expounded on here on the Haimi website. So friends, very, very interesting, as we are learning about a great rabbi from Turkey in of its day, a rabbi we've mentioned about here on various occasions before here inside the series. And remember, Turkey had a great Jewish community in of that specific time. That's something that we have to point out. The Haimi website actually is very famous for giving a lot of different biographical videos within regards to great rabbis, and they list, and we have listed already here on this series, possibly about more than 150 rabbis from Turkey we have actually spoken about. So he was very much, as I said before, he passed away, I believe, in the year 1840. He lived at a time period where there were other famous rabbis, especially that were Turkish, including the famous Rabbi Eliezer Chazan, Rabbi Avram Korkidi, if I'm not mistaken, who we also spoke about here on various occasions before. Other famous rabbis that were at his time, I think Rabbi Baruch Yerushalmi, if I'm not mistaken, but he passed away in 1899. Rabbi Baruch Kalomiti, I think he passed away in 1825. Rabbi David Amado, another rabbi we mentioned about extensively, I believe he passed away in 1831. A few years after he passed away, Rabbi David Parnasaya, if I'm not mistaken, He passed away in 1849, another very famous rabbi of his time. There was also the famous Rabbi Chaim Avram Gagin, would live to 1848. So that was once again another similar time period. And Rabbi Chaim Shonshon, another rabbi I spoke about, passed away in the 1859. Now I think Rabbi Yehuda ben Avisti passed away around the same few years circumference as he did. He actually passed away seemingly reported over here on Yud Daled Shvat in the year 1840. I think we recorded biography videos about the vast majority of the Rabbanim we are speaking about over here today, here inside the series. Rabbi Yitzchak Farchi, if I'm not mistaken, he would pass away in 1853, another key rabbi at that time. A rabbi that was passed away significant enough after he passed away, Rabbi Palumbo did, was Rabbi Yeshua Yosef Pontrimoli, but he passed away in the year 1870. Another famous rabbi that was back there at that point in time was Rabbi Yisrael Moshe Chazan, who passed away in 1863, we should point him out. Rabbi Moshe Chaim Matzliach, I think, would pass away in the year 1845. So I think I did mention him inside the video of the Turkish Jewish community history video, which was a presentation that we recorded a period ago. So he was also another famous rabbi of his time. And there were many rabbis. Rabbi Nissim Yitzchak Tzoriano, for example, was Rabbi Sadiah Levi Mercado, I think passed away in 1840. That was same very much circumference as he was. Also Rabbi Raphael Ashkenazi, Rabbi Raphael Yosef Chazan, Rabbi Raphael Yaakov Menashe, another great rabbi of his time. In 1844, Rabbi Raphael Meir Hassan passed away. I think he had Turkish connection, and you can see what an all-star list of great Chachamim there was over there at that stage in time. So we explored some of the highlights from his book, which we did mention about before. He had many highlights from his great Torah colossal work. There's some very much I have to point out. And yeah, don't forget to light candles in the great rabbi's memory. If you descend from any of the great Chachamim we happen to be speaking about here inside this series, friends, please send me an email. I would love to hear more information within regards to great rabbis of yesteryear. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Now, friends, we're a community here. There's no community like ours where we explore the life of great rabbis of yesteryear. If you descend from any of the great Chachamim that we are speaking about, please send me an email. I would love to hear more information on the great Chacham, and if you've got any extra tidbits, that would be very, very much helpful. If you feel there's another Chacham, maybe I should mention more about inside the series. Friends, please don't hesitate. Let me know who you feel that I should speak about. If there is someone to speak about, I really, really appreciate it. We will try and do our best, let's say, to see what we can do within regards to that. So I think it's a very, very important endeavor, and appreciate everyone asking. And Be'ez Hashem, in this merit, we're going to see Moshiach coming now, Be'ezrat Hashem, and that's obviously the goal. That's what we all want, and very, very important. So that's just to say that also, to give over that information. I think it's very important over here. Now, friends, it's, yeah, just exploring the life of great rabbis of yesteryear. And please, everyone, learn more about the great Chachamim. And yeah, let's join our community. Let's help grow our community, make it the best inside the world. Now, one thing we're aiming for at the moment is 9,000 subscribers. Come what the time period of Tu B'Shvat. That's a goal that we can have. I think it's a goal that we can definitely aspire to. And with all the fantastic feedback, yeah, Be'ez Hashem, maybe we can also collaborate to some specific degree. I think that's very, very important. That is, and I was speaking to a famous outreach rabbi, let's just say, that was actually stressing the importance of this, respectively. So, friends, anyone, thank you for watching at the moment. And yeah, blessings from Israel over here. And please don't forget to watch other videos here inside the series. We also record videos on the history of various countries across the world with regards to Jewish communities. We record with a great Jewish personality of modern day also to really give us a boost of energy. And we do tours all over Israel, exciting tours. We like to go to places that many people don't necessarily will visit. So everyone, wishing you well. Thanks for watching. Take care.